ask a question of someone who believes the Earth is flat for real, this would be the time to do it. At 839-1059, Robbie Davidson is here. He is the founder of Celebrate Truth. They produce groundbreaking documentary films such as The Global Lie, and the latest film is called Scientism Exposed, reaching millions of people across the world. He's an organizer of the Flat Earth International Conference. And he's here right now. Hello, and you're in Canada right now. Hello, Robbie.
Actually in Canada, yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. That's right. I'm doing the Flat Earth International Conference, and it is completely sold out, and we've got media and press coming from all over the place. So it's going to be a great time.
Let me tell you where I am with the Flat Earth stuff. I heard about it for the last maybe year or two. And just heard about it, references to people believing the Earth is flat in 2016 and 2017, in the modern era. And I kind of dismissed it. I go, that must be some internet joke. It must be a goof. It must be some stupid club or something. I just dismissed it as like garbage. And then, I don't know, went down some kind of rabbit hole on the internet, spent about 10 or 15 minutes actually, all right, what is the flat Earth stuff that I keep seeing? And then I found out something. They're serious. You actually are serious about believing the Earth is flat. It's not a joke. Is that correct, Robbie?
It's absolutely not a joke, but I'll tell you one thing. I sure laughed at this when I first heard about it. The whole idea, and like you said, 2016, 2017, some people believing that the Earth could be flat. Wow, I'll tell you. But once you take that, you go deeper, you start looking into it, you're blown away with what you find out. So I think that's why it's exploding right now. I mean, you've got NFL players, you've got sports athletes, all sorts of people. I mean, there are scientists coming out with this. There's pilots, there's engineers, there's surveyors. I mean, this is such an incredible topic because it hits from so many different angles. It hits from a scientific, using the scientific method, kind of a conspiratorial angle, and then also there's the religious angle. But there's all three, and there's three types of people that are coming to this. So you can't put someone in a box and say, hey, these guys are all stupid, because there's some pretty smart, intelligent people starting to seriously question the world and what's been presented to them.
And you're not doing this, and again, I'm only just doing the negatives first here. You're not doing this to mock like other people. Like you claim to be, you're a Christian, but you believe in a flat Earth, and you're not doing it to mock Christianity. Some people think others are doing it to mock science or something.
I'll tell you one thing. Yeah. I wish that it could be proved scientifically 110%. I'd love to go back to believing in the globe, and life would be so much simpler. I mean, I've never been laughed at, mocked, ridiculed, the names that I've been called, and many in the community. So to tell you the truth, honestly, I would love for nothing more than this to be completely false and go back to the world that I lived in. Everything was good. But no, that's the reality of the whole situation. There's just an explosion taking place. Thousands, tens of thousands of people. Like I have over 6 million views just on my channel, and there's a lot of channels on YouTube that are a lot bigger than me and focus on a lot of different areas other than what I do. But bringing everyone together for the first time ever in Raleigh, North Carolina, November 9th and 10th for the Flat Earth International Conference, and you can check it out at fe2017.com, and you can see all the list of speakers and all the different topics, because we're not just covering a few, we're covering a lot.
Now, tell our listeners who never heard about this before, what does the model look like? What does the Earth look like if it's flat? Tell us, how that looks, like on a map or whatever.
Well, it's hard. It's hard for a lot of people. Sometimes they'll say, hey, do you have a certain model? And I would say that pretty much the consensus with the entire community is there's no complete model. But what I can say is that when it comes to the spinning ball flying through space model that we've been given, that we're spinning at 1,000 miles at the equator, we're flying around the universe at unknown speeds, just absolutely craziness. Most people, where they're aligned, is saying we seriously doubt the narrative and what we've been taught. Because quite honestly, when you start applying the scientific method and you try to prove the actual spherical Earth, you can't do it. Sure, you can say, oh, there's pictures. Sure, you can say, what about the boats going over the horizon? Only problem with that, though, is when you grab your cell phone and that boat disappears, you zoom in and you can bring that ship right back. So a lot of these things where people way back believe, well, we must be on a ball because look at those ships that go over the horizon. Technology's caught up to the point where people are now starting to apply different tactics to find out, wait, is this true? And the whole plan is really, when it comes down to the Earth, why do you believe that you're on a globe? Is it because someone told you? Is it because you saw a picture? Or how can you prove it using the scientific method if you honestly do believe this is scientific?
Let's talk about the horizon for a second. You kind of probably believe that you're not really going over a curve to disappear. It's just a perspective. You're so far away you can't see it. Is that basically it?
Well, sure. The reality is, I mean, things with the laws of perspective, I mean, they go smaller as you move further away. So the whole idea that, you know, if the Earth was flat, you'd be able to see Spain, like, you know, some of the scientists have come forward in trying to debunk this, have brought up, you know, the fact of dropping mics or basically saying we should be able to see Spain. But, I mean, anyone logically looking at it, you know, looking at things at a distance, know that things shrink and they fall down towards the horizon. But here's the reality. The fact is, when it comes to the horizon, no matter if you're on a beach, if you're on a mountain, or you go up to 120,000 feet without a fisheye lens, it is flat, and the horizon always comes to eye level. If we were on a ball at 25,000 miles in circumference, the further you went up in altitude, the horizon would drop. As you went up, it would drop, but we're not seeing that. And again, with a lot of the pictures that have been supplied, they have fisheye lenses, you know, GoPros, but people that are actually sending lenses up, just straight lenses, up to 120,000 feet. Most airliners, you know, go at about 30,000 feet. This is 120,000 feet. It is flat.
I've seen those videos. There are videos circulating, just to tell the listeners, right, that, you know, you see guys way up, and it looks like the Earth is curved, but you're saying that's because they're using a fisheye lens. And I've also seen these videos where you're way up in a balloon or something, upper atmosphere, and they purport to not be using a fisheye lens, and the video does purport to show flat.
Well, if you watch a lot of the videos, even if they're taking off at about 6 feet, just pause the video and you'll see the Earth is already curved at 6 feet. Well, we know at 6 feet you can't see the curvature of the Earth. So it shows that the lens is distorting that reality.
All right.
The fact of the matter is that most perceptions and most people believe that they're on a globe is because it was taught at a very early age, you know, when we didn't have we weren't equipped to be able to actually ask the hard questions.
Well, let me ask you this question. What about people who say, well, we've seen it from space. We've launched things in orbit and beyond. We can look back and we see a globe.
Sure, and this is getting into the space agencies and NASA. What I will say when it comes to that is we maybe have to look into it a little bit deeper because, again, in the 60s and 70s, they supposedly went to the moon, 240,000 miles away. The reality is, in the last almost 50 years, the furthest that man has gone is 400 miles. That's a fraction of a percent. So ask yourself the question, if it was so easy in the 60s and 70s to go to the moon, why have they not been back? And some people will say, well, you know, they don't need to. Why haven't they been even remotely close? The reality is they've only gone 400 miles. You can look this up, not just with NASA, ESA, other space agencies. The furthest that man has been, not probes, not robots, man, is 400 miles. Well, the moon is supposedly 238,000 miles away. So what I'm saying is, could it be that if they didn't go to the moon, if they can't get up that high, because they're only showing us right now in the ISS, they're at 250 miles high, which is strange. But anyways, could they not be lying about the pictures? The reality is, regardless whether you believe it's a lie or not, how do you know that you are on a globe? How can you prove without being shown or taught or, you know, shown a picture? Because the reality also is that when you go to NASA and you click on these pictures, they admit they're composites. They admit that they don't have real photographs of the Earth. They don't have a video, you know, HD video footage of the spinning Earth.
We see these images. We see these images, but when you really think about it, it shows a circle and it looks like it's from space, but then you go, wait, what was that far away to take it? And it looks like it does look fake when you really think about it.
Sure, you got Neil deGrasse Tyson saying that now, no, it's an oblate spheroid. It's actually pear-shaped. I mean, you have the scientists coming forward now and saying some ridiculous things. So the question is, okay, well, wait a minute, are they lying or is NASA lying? But could it be that even when you go to NASA's website and they admit they're composites, this is data stitched together because we can't get far enough away. And when they actually do get further enough away, you start looking at it and you have clone stamping in Adobe. The clouds, they're all stamped in the clone tool. So again, people diagnosing, you know, looking even the analysts of this, they've looked at it as fraud. And again, this is just one thing, but there is a mountain of evidence. It's not just, photographs. It's like 50 things.
Yeah, Robbie, let me get to a common question. It's coming in via text and call.
Sure.
Kevin, he thinks you're kooky, but he says, I guess he thinks you will fall off the edge when you get to it, LOL. So what about that question? Why can't we go to the edge and fall off?
See, and a lot of people will talk about that. They'll say, well, they saw those pictures of the ships going, over the edge, and it made it look ridiculous. And that's one reason that most people bring this up. The reality is that when you look in most ideas when it comes to Antarctica is a very interesting place. They basically did the Antarctica Treaty. For anyone listening, look up the Antarctica Treaty. It's the only place where only government and science can go. Sure, you can go there and take a little tour, but if you want to go, explore, go climbing, do whatever, you will not be allowed. There's 37 nations that signed a peace treaty, and it's the longest-running peace treaty ever in Antarctica. What most flat earthers believe is that basically the mystery lies in Antarctica, and how they would view it is that there's no way you could fall off, because if you look at Antarctica, it's got 100 feet of ice. There's an ice ring that surrounds the Earth, and again, most people don't understand it, and they'll say, "Well, how could you fly around the Earth?" Just think of a plate and circle it with your finger. That's how basically the idea is.
Let me explain it to the listeners on what I've read. Okay, again, I'm not saying I believe this, but I think I'm going to accurately portray a common belief about the flat Earth, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. Picture a plate, a circle. In the center is the North Pole, let's say. And on the outer rim, all the way around the perimeter of the plate, or in this case, the map, is an ice wall, which would be Antarctica, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and that's, not like an ice wall like, Game of Thrones or anything like this, but what we're talking about is a boundary that is there. And again, if anyone wants to look at the Antarctica, it's very, very interesting. Not to mention, when you get into the southern hemisphere, all these planes that go missing, it says, what about GPS? What about GPS? Well, the reality is, if you look at a simulator as far as, tracking airplanes, you'll notice that in the southern, they basically disappear. You'll see them in the northern, going back and forth, everything's cool. But something is weird going on in the south. But I think that the secret lies in Antarctica. There's a lot of people looking into it, trying to figure out what's going on. But it is mysterious, because right after the Antarctica, they seal that down. They start going up with NASA.
Next question. I'm sorry. We're going to invite your calls. I'm going to take a short break. 839-1059. I'm going to tell people how to see your films, too. 839-1059. Nancy says, I just changed the channel. Again, this is indicative of how angry people get about this. I don't understand why they're so mad. But she says, I can't listen to this flat earth guy. So he doesn't believe any of our satellites exist. I use one of many apps on my iPod called Living Earth. It shows day-by-day real-time weather events like hurricanes, etc., and I watch it change daily. So what about satellites and people using these apps that they think they're looking from space to the Earth?
Sure. Again, Google. If you start looking into these projects, and NASA, they admit that a lot of the stuff's used through, weather-grade military weather balloons. And really, I'm going to ask any of the listeners, if you believe in satellites so much, why don't you find me a real photograph of a satellite? If you type it in Google...
Wait a minute. What's the challenge? Wait a minute. What's the challenge to the listeners?
Find a real picture of a satellite. Do a Google search and try to find a real picture of a satellite. Try to find a satellite taking a picture of another satellite, because again, there's supposed to be 20,000 of them. 20,000 of them up there. You never see them traverse the moon. You never see, And again, people claim they see things up there, but the question is, what is it they're seeing? Because nobody has actually seen it. It's not possible. They've seen lights in the sky, but they can't see the shape. Even people will claim they've seen the ISS, but the fact is they're not seeing that. And I'd love to see the photograph if they can actually support it.
That's a challenge for Nancy.
No, satellites don't exist. Satellites don't exist.
They don't exist. Next question. No. If the sun is round and the moon is round, why is the Earth flat?
Because the Earth's created different from everything else. That's like saying the pool table has to be spherical because the balls are spherical. The fact of the matter is everything up in the sky is different than what we are on right now.
You also, isn't it a common theory that you don't believe the Earth, the sun is as big as it is and it's so many hundreds of millions of miles away?
Correct. There's a reason, because all of a sudden the moon and the sun look the same size, because they are the same size. And with most models, if you get them a lot smaller and a lot closer, what are we told? That the sun's 93 million miles away. The fact of the matter is, the sun, even if you look at sun rays, you start looking into all sorts of different things based on spherical geometry, looking into all different types of mathematical formulas. You'll see that the rays are coming in. They're not perpendicular. You can see this very clearly. You can estimate that the sun is a lot closer than what we've been taught, based on 93 million miles away. And the fact of the matter of going to the moon in 1960s with technology less than an iPhone 3, they're going to go 250,000 miles away with 1960s technology? Right. They haven't done it since. Nobody's going to do it. You won't see it ever again.
Robbie Davidson, the one of the organizers of the Flat Earth International Conference. And again, you hear people maybe referring to flat earthers. They're serious. They're not joking around. Tom, do you have a question for Robbie at 839-1059?
It's more of a common question here, Nancy. We don't have to worry about ships going off the edge of the earth. Your big problem is your giant sea monsters and King Ness.
He's making a sea monster joke. Look, I'd like to take some serious questions, actually. I know you may think there are no serious questions with this, but
that's the thing, and I want to say this, that most people, and again, we're talking tens of thousands of people are coming to this, they laughed at this. They thought this was the most ridiculous thing. There is nothing more ridiculous than someone believing in a flat earth in 2017. Trust me, I hear you. I know where your callers, I know where your listeners are at. This is ridiculous. But what I'm saying, if you take the time and you start looking into it,
okay. When did you first start believing in a flat Earth?
Well, I've been basically believing in flat Earth for about 2 years now. But I laughed at it.
And what was the thing that put you over the edge? Like, what would you suggest listeners do? What put you over the edge into becoming a believer?
I would just say just spend like about 4 or 5 hours, spend a weekend, spend even like a night, an evening, and just say, you know what, I want to give this a chance just to look into it so that I can basically completely debunk it if you want to, or come out to the conference or check it out. What I'm saying is people that are presenting the information, there might be something like my film, Scientism Exposed. When I came out with it, it's not a flat earth film. It just shows that the difference between science and scientism. I love science. Science is wonderful. Don't get me wrong. And I would say the majority of flat earthers love science. What they're against is scientism, which is a belief. It's a religion just like anything else. It is not truly under the scientific method. So again, when Scientism Exposed came out, it was a way of just showing different areas where, hey, they're teaching children scientific proven facts when in the reality is they're not scientifically proven.
I got it. I know the difference, and that is an important distinction. I think I'll check your film out. It's called Scientism Exposed. I love science as well, scientific method. It's fantastic, but scientism is a completely different issue that people need to realize. You're right about that.
Correct. Yeah, and that's the reality. Is that there's a difference between science and scientism. Unfortunately, most of the things like the theory of relativity, for example, black holes, dark matter, these are scientism. These cannot be proven with the scientific method. It's a theory. You can come up with all these ideas, but don't sit there and say it's scientific. You cannot observe it. You can't repeat it. You can't. There's no way to test it.
What about? I want to ask you about gravity. Do you believe gravity is a real thing?
Well, if you start looking at the fact of I would say most flat earthers would look at it as buoyancy, density. They would look at it as magnetic. They'd say, wait a minute, if gravity, when you're talking the whole idea, the theory of gravity, remember, it's never been tested. It's never been observed. It's never been, there's been no scientific experiment. You can't even see it, quantify it. There's nothing in it that basically will help people to understand fully. But the reality of the matter is that when it comes to gravity, this is the wonderful thing they say with everything. Oh, how does this work? Oh, gravity. How does that work? Gravity. The question is it truly scientific, or is it a theory that basically sticks and does everything that it needs to? Yes, you're going to need gravity if you've got this exploding Big Bang, and again, remember that the scientific narrative is that nothing exploded and created everything. So understand that everything you see came from nothing. And they say we're silly. They're the ones that are saying this is scientific, that nothing created everything.
Right. In other words, the apple falls to the ground from the tree because the apple is heavier than the air. That's basically I mean, we know that, and it's not really...
Exactly. And again, something that's heavier, that's denser than the medium that it's in. So yeah, of course, yeah, an apple heavier than air, right? That's why you see helium balloons rise. If gravity was so strong, why wouldn't it suck that balloon down?
Right. You think just that
little...
It
keeps the oceans. It keeps, the millions of tons of oceans, but yet a butterfly can fly above the water, and it doesn't suck it down. So it basically, it picks and chooses what it wants it to do. But again, if it's this incredible of a force where it can suck in, the moon, and the moon can affect the tides, well, how does the moon, affect the tides when Earth's gravity is way more stronger than the moon's gravity? So
well, that's fascinating. So hold on, just ponder that for a second. Gravity, quote unquote, in your theory, I'm just trying to repeat this correctly, is so powerful that it can hold the massive weight of the oceans down on a curvature, but yet a butterfly can float through the air.
Well, yeah, exactly, and that's what we're seeing all the time when it comes to all these different experiments, right? It's just like if gravity is really a force strong enough to hold the world's oceans, buildings, people, and atmosphere stuck to the surface of a spinning ball, then it's impossible for gravity to also simultaneously be weak enough to allow little birds, bugs, and planes to take off and travel freely, unabated in any direction. Right? If gravity is strong enough, right?
Yeah, Natalie, you're on with Robbie. Do you have a question?
Yes. Good morning. I just am sort of like a new flat earther myself. I've kind of researched this a little bit for the last month. And, of course, there's a lot of Christians that do believe in it. And I thought it was interesting, the Revelation 7:1, it says, after this I saw the four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding back the four winds of the earth to prevent any wind from blowing on the land and the sea. So, I mean, that's kind of like the four corners there in the scripture. But then you have people say, well, that's not right. So how do you defend that?
Do you think it's like
I agree with it, but how do you defend?
Right. Do you think it's like a literal corners, Robbie?
Yeah, and I do. I mean, it talks in the Bible. It talks about the circle being inscribed in the face of the deep. How do you inscribe a ball into the face of the deep? But yeah, I do believe that basically there's a inscribed, and that there are four areas outside. The Bible's very clear. It talks about an uninhabitable area of the earth.
Back to your idea, there are flat earth believers who are purport to be Christians, but also those who purport to be non-believers. This is not exclusive to one idea. Is that correct? Betty in Georgetown is here. Betty, do you have a question for Robbie?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I guess what I'm concerned about with this is, if we didn't go to the moon, does that mean that all of the other countries that also claim to have gone into outer space and provided these photos of the Earth being a sphere, did we all work together with these other countries on this conspiracy to...
Well, no other countries have landed people on the moon.
No, but
that's the reality.
They've gone into outer space. They have people in space stations. We've had photos from space stations, the Russian space station.
Yeah, Robbie, what about that?
Sure. And there's 7 billion humans, and again, just over 500 people have ever allegedly been to space. So what I'm saying is, when it comes to 500 people, are we going to take the word of those 500 people? Over 7 billion of us, you and I will never go to space. Unfortunately, that's basically militarized governments. You've got to be selected. But here's the question. The question is, are we relaying all our information to our children based on what these guys said, or can we scientifically prove it using the scientific method? It should be very easy for us just to go out and say, you know what, let's test this. Let's test the curvature. The curvature rates on the Earth are 8 inches per mile squared. Here's the problem. People are going out and they're starting to see things 60, 70, 80, 100 miles away. That is impossible. At 60 miles away, something should be a half a mile below the curvature of the Earth. Yet people with optics are seeing it. Now, they'll come forward and say, oh, it's a mirage. It's not wavy. It's not upside down. People are seeing things. On New Zealand, you can see from the North Island to the South Island, it's over 100 miles. So, again, people are seeing things that they clearly shouldn't see based on the math, based on what we've been taught.
Betty, thank you for that. Robbie, I'm going to finish with you in a second. I want you to hold on. I do appreciate you taking as much time as you can.
Sure.
He is the producer-director of The Global Lie and Scientism Exposed, and organizer of the Flat Earth Conference. Back in a minute here. Harry's Razors. I love them. And you'll love them, too. Go to, and they're so confident that you're going to love them like I do, that they are giving you a trial set for free. Go to harrys.com. Enter my promo code DANG, and they'll send you the ergonomic razor handle, the 5 precision-engineered blades, just like I used this morning with the trimmer blade and the lubricating strip. They'll send you the rich lathering shave gel and a travel blade cover. And post-shave balm now, if you just go to harrys.com. That's a great offer. Special offer for fans of the show. Go to harrys.com right now. Enter code DANG at checkout to get post-shave balm also for free. That's harrys.com/DANG. All you pay is a few bucks in shipping when you sign up. Go to harrys.com. Use a promo code DANG. Back in a minute.
CBS News Special Report. Hugh Hefner, the man who founded the
Stories of the Day with Matt Monks. 4 to 7 on Delaware 105.9.
Here is one of the cornerstones of many who believe the earth is flat, for real. Most people subscribe to they call it the heliocentric globe model to explain where we are in the universe. You know, that the earth is round. We're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour while traveling the sun at, they say, 66,000 miles per hour. And then the entire solar system is then moving through the Milky Way galaxy at maybe 490,000 miles an hour as the whole galaxy is maybe moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. All this. Anyway, a lot of the flat earth people say that every science experiment ever conducted to prove even the simple spin of the earth has failed. And Robbie Davidson is one of these flat earth people. We're in the middle of a discussion with him. He's helped organize the Flat Earth International Conference, which is sold out. It's in where is it, North Carolina, Robbie?
Yeah, correct.
And Robbie's in Canada right now. He has made 2 documentary films, one called The Global Lie. The other one is called Scientism Exposed. I'm even being ridiculed for just talking to you.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the reaction from most people when it comes to this topic is very visceral, for sure. I mean, it can be very vicious, and people get really angry, and you got to wonder, wait a minute, why not just kind of shrug it off and say, what a bunch of, losers or morons, or these guys are probably the stupidest people that are walking the earth. But yet people get really angry, and there's such crazy reactions to this topic. I've never seen anything like it.
I don't know why they're mad either. That's one reason I wanted to talk to you. I don't understand the anger. I understand maybe let's just hash it out. 839-1059. Melissa from Long Neck says, are you kidding me? Shouldn't there be a bunch of missing people that fall off the edge? I guess she missed that explanation earlier. Justin, I always wondered if you flew a plane going the opposite direction of the Earth spinning, wouldn't it take less time than flying the directions it is spinning? What about airplane travel, Justin wants to.
Yeah, airplane travel, it's a real big problem. That's why pilots are coming forward and stuff, because the reality is this: if you're on a ball, you're living on a spinning globe, airplanes would constantly have to dip their noses down every few minutes to compensate for the curvature of the Earth. With a circumference of 25,000 miles, the Earth would be constantly curving at the speed of an airplane. In reality, however, they never do this. So again, planes fly with, different instrumentation, but the idea that if you continually fly at 30,000 feet and you stay completely on that altitude, you're going to fly into outer space. You've got to continually keep dipping your nose. Well, the reality is with gyroscopes and all the different instrumentation, pilots are basically saying, no, our instrumentation, we stay at 30,000 feet, and we never, ever have to account for the curvature of the Earth. So what's going on?
You're saying airplanes don't have to constantly dip their nose.
Correct.
Yeah. Here's a great question. This person says, what about the Foucault pendulum at the Franklin Institute proving the Earth's daily rotation in its axis? Now, let me ask you about that. A lot of people have been to a science museum. They have this at the Smithsonian as well and other museums. They have this giant pendulum, several stories tall, and they claim that it's moving and constantly moving and rotates. It hits different pins that they have in a circular pattern, and it shows that the Earth is spinning. What about that?
Well, if the Earth actually was spinning, it would be able to start by itself. But the reality is you actually have to start it in either one direction or the other. But all Foucault pendulum and being able to demonstrate it or to repeat it, it has to get started. So someone actually has to start to swing it. Most Foucault pendulums that are actually on display in museums have motors at the top to keep it continually going. So no, it's actually been completely debunked.
By the way, that Foucault, keeping the motor thing, I actually looked that up. I said, that certainly can't be true. And sure enough, they claim it is. They stop them at night and restart them sometimes.
Correct. And if they were spinning, you'd never even have to worry about that. It would just automatically go. But no, if you actually look into it, and that's what's so shocking. Each one of these things, these are very common. Everyone comes to this at the very beginning. What about this? What about this? Every single one have been completely, thoroughly debunked. There is just ample evidence, articles, there's books being written, there's videos being done. And that's the crazy thing about this whole topic. No matter what you come at, whether you come at the stars, when it comes to the actual time-lapse photography with star trails, if we're flying around the universe, at 500,000 miles an hour, why are the stars staying exactly the same, circling around Polaris? Right? So these are the problems that people are having. They're starting to actually figure out their world using the scientific method, go out, be a scientist, go out, do the science yourself, try to figure it out. But the reality is you're going to come back and going, we cannot conclusively prove the curvature of the Earth or the spin. You brought up I'll say the one last thing here when it comes to the two experiments that you talked about. But yeah, that's another reality, is the scientific experiments that basically were put in place to actually try to prove, was Airy's failure. It proved the stars move relatively to a stationary Earth, not the other way around. They didn't like the results. But then also Michelson Morley and the Saginaw experiments attempted to measure the change in speed of light due to Earth's assumed motion through space. Guess what? It failed. So what did they do? They came up with a theory of relativity because they didn't like the experiments that had been done. The reality is, if you look up any experiment to prove the movement of the Earth or the curvature of the Earth, it doesn't exist. And if someone can do it, can prove scientifically the movement or the curve of the Earth, you will be famous beyond all people that have ever lived, because we cannot find anyone to do it.
Let me take a call from James in Millsboro. You're on with Robbie. Hi, James.
Good morning, Dan, Robbie. I can definitely appreciate the conversation, and I really like the arguments of like the gravity and butterfly and the guy making the big jump from 25 miles up. There's a lot of things to consider there. I do have a question about what they call the Coriolis Effect, which they say snipers that make these like 2-mile shots and stuff have to take into account. And, there's a lot of things going on there. You have bullet drop, the rotation of the bullet and the distance and everything. And I'm just curious, if they say to make that shot, you have to allow for the rotation of the Earth. So,
sure. And you have snipers.
It is a proven fact that to make that shot, you have to take that into account, so that if the Earth wasn't rotating, there would be no Coriolis effect, and you would be able to shoot directly.
All right, let's let Robbie see if he knows anything about that. Go ahead, Robbie.
Sure, and when you actually look into it, that's the problem. You've got snipers coming forward. You've got military commander operators that are coming forward. They're actually completely painting targets 60, 70, 80 miles, no problem, and yet they are not taking in the Coriolis effect. If you actually start looking into it, research on the Coriolis effect. Start typing in flat Earth Coriolis effect. See what we have to say about it, and then find out what they have to say about it. The idea here is, when it comes to a good, solid debate, no one's coming forward. Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, Richard Dawkins. These guys will not have a debate because they can't scientifically prove it. All they can do is laugh, mock, call names, and drop mics on a stage and use profanities. This is what we're dealing with, and we're just asking, please show us the scientific experiment to prove this. The Coriolis effect is something that I looked into myself, and again, you got problems because, again, everyone that's coming forward in the handbooks themselves, find a sniper or a military handbook, no Coriolis effect is taken into effect.
Well, I love the conversation. It's definitely something to think about, and I always say that one day that science is going to prove the Bible true, and I love the four corners and all that.
Okay, thanks, James, for the call. Up. Thank you. Keep it up. Yep, and keep your calls coming. Just a couple of more, and then we'll have to wrap it up here today. Nancy, who said she had changed the channel, is actually back with two other questions. How does satellite TV work, such as Dish Network and DirecTV, if satellites don't exist?
Well, start looking at the actual satellites. How are they pointed, right? If you actually start looking at the degrees and the radius that they're pointed at, could it be that they're bouncing off the ionosphere? Could it be that they're actually just triangulation? Notice that basically satellite, telephone. Hey, does anyone have a satellite telephone? No. That technology went nowhere. But again, we have triangulation when it comes down to cell phone towers. Actually, I did a video just recently about a public company in Europe that are going to put a LTE phone network tower on the moon by next year, which is laughable. It will never happen. It's just kind of like, when you're looking into these space agencies like Virgin Galactic or SpaceX, year after year after year, they promise that they're going to be doing things, and they always postpone it. It never happens, and this is the reality. Again, when it comes to satellites, I know it's a shocker. It was a shocker for me because I'm like, wait a minute, there's no way. They have to be real. Find a real picture of a satellite. There's supposedly supposed to be 20,000 of them up there. Should be easy of one satellite up there taking a shot of a bunch of other satellites, shouldn't it? It doesn't exist. Cartoons, drawings, renderings, composites. This is what NASA even proves, and it shows on their own website. This is the problem we're facing. Could it be that basically they're bouncing it, they're triangulating it, based on the technology that we have? Cell phone, that's exactly how we're getting most GPS signals. That's why they're losing planes in the southern hemisphere. It's because everything is ground cables underneath the ocean floor. But yet the mysterious part about it is in the southern hemisphere, look at what's going on down there. The GPS, when you find a flight tracker, you will see they disappear from once they leave land and they land. There's no tracking at all over the ocean. What's going on?
Right, we learned that with that missing plane. That's what shocked everybody when that Malaysia plane went missing or whatever.
And it shouldn't. Based on GPS, if we have global positioning, we should be able to track anything anywhere on the supposed globe. The fact of the matter is, looking into the south, you're going to find some very suspicious things. If you look at air flights and stuff, there is no direct flights in the southern hemisphere going from like New Zealand to like Brazil or this. They don't exist. If you want to look into cruises, there's no cruises that exist down there. They all exist in the north. It's very suspicious. Something weird's going on.
Can you tell me, we answered this already, but a question says, can you tell me why when I go to Rehoboth Beach and I watch ships slowly disappear over the horizon? We addressed that early on in the show.
Sure, grab your cell phone. Grab your cell phone and wait till it disappears. Grab your cell phone, zoom in, and you can bring it right up over the curve.
It's really just farther away. That's why it appears to be disappearing.
It's just further away.
It's
correct. Yeah,
okay.
It's basically laws of perspective. As things move away, they get smaller.
Dr. Z, do you have a question for Robbie?
Yeah, actually, a couple. But I may have missed this. Now, Robbie says the Earth is flat. But what is the shape of it then? Is it a disc? Is it a cube? What is it? What's the shape of the object?
Great question.
Well, my personal belief would be that we're in kind of like, if you've seen the movie Truman Show, we're in basically a snow globe. So again, it has basically a covering over top, and again, the sun, moon, and stars are inside. So we're in one big palladium sort of thing.
All right, very good. Kathy is next in Bridgeville. Do you have a question for Robbie?
Yeah. So if the Earth is flat, like you're saying, then I'm assuming, are you saying that all the continents are on the one side that we exist on? Is that what you're saying? Like all the continents that we know about?
No, the plate. Think
and
of
then
the
what's on the other side?
No. Explain it, Robbie.
The disc.
Sure. Yeah. Basically, like I think you brought it up before, is in the center is you got the North Pole. The entire ring of the plate is the south, which is Antarctica. So any direction you go other than north, you're going to head towards Antarctica. And all the continents, if you actually just type in flat Earth map, you will actually see. And what's interesting is the UN flag, the UN actual logo, is actually what most flat earthers believe. You can actually see it. If you look at the map for the UN, if you look at their flag and you look at their logo, you're going to see something missing. Uh-oh, something's missing. Antarctica doesn't exist on that map, but yet it shows a ring all the way around it. Could they be showing you something in plain sight? I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe.
Look that up, and that'll give you a visualization. It's a common thing to see on the Internet. Next question from Marie in Millsboro. Marie, go ahead, please.
No question, just applause. Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much for covering this topic. Thank you, sir, for what you're attempting to
enlighten. Well, I don't know. People think he's crazy and nuts, and then I'm wasting time.
Yeah, but that's all right. And then they're gonna look into it, and then they're gonna, you know what I mean? They're gonna catch a thread. That's okay. People think everything's, all geniuses are crazy in the beginning, but you might spark people to catch on to that thread, and then they start unraveling things and questioning, and that's a gift. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you, Dan. You've actually been awesome, and just very fair.
Well, I've watched other interviews. Look, I've watched other interviews, and these supposedly professional media people, all they do is make fun of you. Or not you, but
so I appreciate it because, like I said, I mean, let's have a debate, let's have a discussion, and there's no need for name calling. I mean, we honestly are seeking, and we honestly are genuinely interested in talking to people. If people don't want to talk to us, fine, but we don't need to be treated like less than. And that's kind of what a lot of people in the community are experiencing right now. Is they're getting called a lot of names. They've been ridiculed. It's tearing them away from different individuals. So, anyways, it's just a really really nice thing, and I'm just very thankful for your approach and being able to bring the topic up on the station.
Real quick, I may have missed it, but what about the lunar eclipse and solar eclipse? Someone asks online question.
Sure, and again, when you come in that basically doesn't say at all. A lot of people will say, "Oh, it must be the moon." The only problem is there's been many accounts when the sun and moon are up at the same time when there's been lunar eclipses. The eclipse is very fascinating. One thing I will say about the Great American Eclipse that happened, one person brought out, something pretty amazing about it was that it was a 70-mile shadow. Well, understand this: how do you actually create a shadow smaller than the object itself? So if you get the sun, 93 million miles away, take a flashlight, shine it on the ball, and try to make that actual shadow smaller than the ball. So here's the reality. Could it be they're lying to us about the size of the moon? Because what we saw in that shadow going across America was 70 miles. Wait a minute. How do you do that? Well, the science guys came forward, NASA, they have no explanation. So, again, it's not just open and shut case. It's the moon. We have it all figured out. They don't have it figured out. People are finding holes in all sorts of their theories.
Dr. Z says, I still did not hear the shape of our Earth. I think you said it's shaped like a snow globe, right?
Yeah, like a snow globe. Think of a snow globe. We don't know what's underneath it. It's basically it's like a snow globe, the sun, moon, and stars. They operate. Everything moves, but we don't. We're stationary.
Okay. I get that. All right. Robbie Davidson, one of many people on planet Earth who are new believers in flat Earth. Some people that even they themselves thought, no way can this be true, but they've become believers. He is organizer of the Flat Earth International Conference, the founder of Celebrate Truth. The Global Lie is one of his movies, and the latest Scientism Exposed 2016.
And I'm actually working on Scientism Exposed 2, and it's going to be premiering November 10th of this year, the sequel, and a lot of people are excited about it, and we're getting into all sorts of new material on that one. So, yeah, definitely check it out. Scientism Exposed is free on YouTube. Just type it in or type in Celebrate Truth. You'll find all my stuff.
Robbie Davidson. Robbie, thank you. I hope to have you back sometime. Good luck with the conference.
Appreciate it, yeah. And if you have any questions, reach out, and we'd love to maybe see you there. Come on down.
Right. Thank you so much. Z typing back. He's having trouble visualizing. A snow globe is round. Well, he thinks it's a circular disc on the bottom that's flat, like a plate. That's the Earth. The globe part above this is the dome that we can never escape from. The sun and the moon are within that globe. That's trying to represent their opinion as honestly as possible. That's one thing about debate that is missing in society when it comes to political, religious, these kinds of theories. I think you got to before you're going to have a discussion or debate, you have to honestly represent the other side. You got to be honest in representing their opinions as they see it. So I try to be very careful I try to be very careful in trying to represent the flat Earth belief from their point of view, so that I didn't, throw out straw man arguments and misrepresentations. Anyway. Tony in Bethany Beach is here. Hi, Tony. You're on the Dan Gaffney program. Hi.
Yeah, I guess we've got to really keep in mind, we've only heard this one side of the story, one man. We need to hear some experts debate this guy, some real scientists.
Well, look,
I mean,
doesn't
all Christians want to believe that this is true. I mean,
no, that's not true. That's not what he said.
Well, it's not what he said, but it's obvious that is the case.
No, it isn't.
It's not?
No. There are flat earthers who are atheists. There are flat earthers of all sorts of beliefs and stripes. This is not a purely religious movement. This is not a religious movement.
I think you don't think it's primarily a religious movement?
No. There's many who make it that, but it's not. No, not based on what I've said or seen. Terry and Lewis, hello.
Hey, good morning, Dan. Yeah, the one thing, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to call him while he was still in the air, but the one thing the way he was saying about the North Pole's the center of the plate and Antarctica is the edge and there's this ice wall. Well, if that's the case, then why is it when these sailors that are trying to set like these new records for a certain, I guess, age category or whatever that want to circumnavigate the globe,
right?
Why do they always go through the Southern Ocean? Because it's the shortest distance.
Well, I don't know. I think they'll show you on a map what they're really doing is traveling in a circle. They're not going around anything. They're just going in a circle.
Right, but what I'm saying though is
because you can't if you look at their map, if you look at their map, you can't go the other way because you run into land. So you got to go the quickest way where there's water. You got to look at their map. I can't really explain it on the radio. But,
okay.
Like if I'm going on an around-the-world trip from New York to someplace else around the world, you think of it as going around a globe. But on their map, you think of it as going in a circle. And if you look at the map, you'll see what I'm saying. AWF is here, Delaware 105.9. Good morning.
A quick question. I hope, in case, sorry if this was covered, has he or anybody walked to the end of the disc and knocked on the side of the globe?
No, I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
Well, he did mention Antarctica and that the treaties in place keep you from going there. He thinks Antarctica, if you will, is not just in the southern hemisphere, but it's circular around us completely. So anytime you move, he says, anytime you move away from the north, which is at the center of the disc, you're going to run into the south, which is what we think of as the south, but it would be the Antarctic wall. He says there are treaties and you can't go exploring there, and et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, okay. So it's guarded. We can't go to the end of our disc to knock on the side of the snow globe.
Like the Truman Show, yes.
Okay. Thanks.
All right.